Mac guys here with you on Birds 365 for showing 18-18 tie between the Eagles and the Browns last night. Here to break down all the exciting action at Lincoln Financial Field last night is Paul Domowitch, who is more exciting with the shirt he's wearing than the entire game was last night. Damo, when did they put the rule in? Was it just last year or a year before? That if we get to the end of 60 minutes and
no overtime, baby. Yeah,
no
when did they? I forget when they put that in, Damo, but I'm glad they put it in, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's funny. They were showing the sideline, and I kind of got the sense that some players and coaches weren't quite sure what the rule was.
Oh, no, nobody is. I mean, I try to keep on top of this stuff, but I wasn't sure. I'm like, because even last week I was saying you got to go for two because you don't want to, it's ingrained in your mind that you got to go for two. And I'm like, why are they trying to tie this game with a 2-point conversion? That was my admit. I'm like, just kick the extra point at that point and lose 18-17. But yeah, I had forgotten. I'd forgotten they
might have been last year, I think.
Yeah. But I'm glad they did. That's a great rule. That might be the best rule change in NFL history. But in the pantheon, and Paul's been around for a while, in the pantheon of preseason games, that's got to be top 5, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, that was hard to watch.
Yeah. All right, Emma, we'll let you get in on a conversation John and I are having, and we're not that separated that much. John made it sound like there's no chance, or at least I shouldn't speak for you, John. I apologize, but here's what you sound like.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance.
There's no chance that Tanner McKee will anywhere in the first anytime. Marcus Mariota, to John's opinion, Marcus Mariota is going to have to come in and throw like 8 interceptions in his first game for Tanner McKee to get in there. I think he's closed the gap. I at least think he's moved the needle that Marcus Mariota just doesn't get carte blanche all year for being the backup quarterback. How much of an effect does last night's play, assuming you agree with both me and John, McKee was good, Mariota was awful. How much do you think the needle was actually moved in the minds of the coaching staff as those should be playing if Jalen Hurts suffers an injury?
I think probably a little bit. I mean, I think that his play in both of the first 2 preseason games has given them some pause. I mean, the fact that, they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks doesn't make it as a decision you really have to make right away. I mean, I believe, Marcus Mariota has started 74 games in his career, a lot of them very good. So, they signed him believing that not only does he have a similar skill set to Jalen, but that he's a pretty good player. He just, yesterday was just awful. I mean, there seems to be something wrong with his footwork, mechanics. I mean, everything's high, and that generally means a footwork problem. So somebody needs to work with him pretty quick. Last week, I actually liked what he did last week, not so much from the passing standpoint, but he had 3 runs that kind of showed what he gives them.
He can still run. He can still run.
Now, what confused me yesterday was he seemed to, and maybe he was told this, he seemed determined to stay in the pocket rather than extend plays outside. He could have done that, and I don't think he would have looked nearly as bad because he's not as good a quarterback in the pocket as he is on when he gets outside the pocket. So,
I mean, you mentioned those starts, Damo, and he played well, certainly in some of them. And experience matters in this league, especially as a backup quarterback, as Jody pointed out, on a Super Bowl team. But Nick said it's also us finding out what he does well too. Right. You don't have a large enough sample size to figure that out. I mean, and what he does well is what you said. He can still run. He's still got juice. He's never been an accurate quarterback. So, he made the one good RPO throw. If we have to see Marcus Mariota, that's what he does well. All RPOs. Go back to Chip Kelly. RPO. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, well, I guess if he doesn't get any, if we don't see any improvement from Mariota, I'm not real concerned at this point because I think Mariota started the Mariota had a streak last year, a stretch early on where he was playing pretty well for Atlanta. And then things just kind of went bad. What concerned me, I don't know if you guys watched the show on Netflix, Quarterback, which the comment at the end by Mariota. Clearly, the Eagles were not a team he was had on his list.
No,
places
they weren't. Yeah,
it was just that there was nobody out there that wanted him and was going to give him this opportunity. And so he said, "Okay, I'll go to the East Coast." But that kind of concerned me. But I still think his skill set fits what they want if something happens to Jalen, and I believe that he's a better quarterback than we saw last night. So I'm not going to push the panic button yet.
All right, Damo, when I got the list of the Eagles that would not be playing last night prior to the game, I shrugged my shoulders, rolled my eyes. I was glad to see that Nakobe Dean was going to play because we debated that yesterday. We thought Nakobe may get injury/deference and not even suit up. He did play, caused the fumble, had a nice game. Give him credit for it. But again, the best players all sitting on the bench, not even dressed. But then the game happens, and the Eagles start dropping like flies, and I go, well, I guess they know what they're doing. They don't want to put any of their star players at risk. Just one of those games that there were that many injuries. Is it that big a factor? Maybe it's the fact that they don't practice as hard as that. They actually get in a game, and the other team actually hits them, and injuries occur, except for the one play where the Eagles injured each other, which wasn't good. How disconcerting is it that in a preseason game that ends in an 18-18 tie, the Eagles actually may pay a price with some significant injuries?
Well, I'm not sure how many of them are significant. I want to see what kind of report we get from them, and actually we probably won't get a very accurate report since they don't really have to tell us. I'm glad both Cleveland and Ajomo are okay. I mean, it doesn't seem to be serious. The one was Cleveland's was freaky. I mean, he just missed a pass, fell and fell the wrong way. I think the shoulder injuries who had the shoulder injuries?
Nolan and Alameda. They're fine. Yeah, they were fine.
Smith came right back out there. So did Alameda. So.
I don't think John's worried about Zach Mack.
Yeah, Zach, I think that's significant. And that's unfortunate because I think they might have lost their two best special teams players back to back. They lost Sean Bradley in Baltimore,
right?
And I think hopefully it's not season ending, but I think it's going to be pretty significant with Zach McPherson. So. I mean, they weren't good on special teams last year, and they just lost their two best special teams players. That's a concern, I think.
Some of the rookies are going to.
Johnson got carted off in practice, and he's been out, but he's fine long term. So you never know with these types of things. But it didn't look good. I will say that.
Well, this is why they don't play the starters. I mean, if you're going to have injuries. God forbid you'd rather them be on the bottom of the roster than the top. So,
yeah, that's the ugly part of the NFL. These guys, and that's why you have all those deference players, and we're the Eagles. Now, before we move on, I just want to rewind back to the quarterback play because you brought up the skill set argument, and a lot of people have brought that up, and that bothers me a little bit. Trying to find somebody who plays like Jalen Hurts. I mean, they're not going to play the way Jalen Hurts does. So what does the style matter? And if that's the case, why is Tanner McKee even here? Why do you draft him? Big 6'6" pocket, traditional, gets the football out quickly, processes quickly. Why is everybody so intent on facing the same style of quarterback? Then Ian Book should, beat out Tanner McKee because he's more of an RPO type quarterback. Do you think that's the proper way to do things when it comes to backup quarterbacks, or be a coach and take the best player, even if they have a different skill set?
Yeah. I talked to people this week, football people, about that, and there's two directions. I mean, they both, I mean, respected people that have two different opinions. I mean, one feels, one group of people feels, you want to have somebody with a similar skill set in case the starter gets hurt, so you can run the same offense you've been running and you don't have to pare it down. But there are other people that think, hey, you got a guy that's drastically different like McKee, and you go from Jalen Hurts to McKee, and they haven't practiced for somebody like McKee all season or all week, and Jalen gets hurt. It throws a wrench into the opposing defenses. They're practicing for somebody a style of offense that they didn't expect. So, every way has its pluses. I mean, I like the fact that there's so many quarterbacks that can run now in the game. I realize these guys are exposed to injury. We saw what happened to Lamar Jackson the last 2 years. We've seen, Jalen get banged up at the end of the year, but it just provides such a different aspect to your offense. And I think if something does happen to Jalen for a couple of weeks, I still think Marcus gives them the best chance to win without Jalen because of the things he can do.
Damo, after these 2 preseason games, we've got a pretty good read on the Eagles' third team as to whether they can actually stay on an NFL field or not. You can't learn a whole hell of a lot. Have you learned anything through 2 games of the 2 new coordinators the Eagles have? Can you even bother trying to decipher whether Sean Desai is doing a good job, whether they're calling good plays on offense? I really want to know, and I want to try and analyze it, but I don't even know that I can. With guys who aren't going to be on the team. What are we learning about the coordinators off 2 preseason games? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think John probably has a much better idea about that than I do because he's at practice and sees the coordinators operate in practice, where, especially these joint practices where a lot more is going on. But they're being vanilla in those joint practices as well as the preseason games. So you're not getting a chance to see what they're gonna. I mean, that's clearly intentional. It seems to be a bigger deal with Nick than I've ever seen with a coach as far as getting to that game and thinking you're going to be able to surprise teams with what you're doing, which that'll work for what, a quarter or 2 quarters. Then they kind of figure out what you're doing and. But anyway, so I think both of those guys are pretty good. I've liked Desai because I like Vic Fangio, and he highly recommend. I mean, they made the point during the broadcast yesterday that both Brian and Sean, neither of these guys Nick knew before he hired him. Brian came from college. Sean was not a guy that typically. But that's not quite the case with Sean because, Vic Fangio was around so much last season around this team. He was visiting practices, and I'm sure that his word carried a lot of weight when they were looking for a defensive coordinator, and he recommended Sean. Brian, I thought Brian was a terrific. I knew he was going to be a head coach. He's going to be a head coach of this league eventually. Could have been a head coach in college 2 years ago. Decided to make the leap to the NFL, and I think he'll be excellent as a play caller, and I think he's going to. We've clearly seen the effect he's had on his longtime friend Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough to say. And Nick was talking about how vanilla everything is on both sides in the preseason, and I had a few fans complaining about the 2-point conversion call in Baltimore. Which was basically just an awful bait throw to, I think it was Nada from Ian Book, had no chance. And now that I'm saying, what do you want him? You want him to roll out his best 2-point conversion call in preseason at Baltimore? I mean, they don't want to show. Now that kind of stuff makes sense to me. You don't want to show that. So yeah, it's tough to get a feel. But I do, and Jody knows, I think Shane Steichen was a hell of a play caller. I really do. I think he was tremendous at it. I think he's got a natural knack for it, an affinity for it. And, Brian himself says it's part, science, part art. There's a feel for it. Like it's Nick's offense, but as I said, we already saw, like Nick's a really good young head coach. but he wasn't a great play caller. Let's be honest. Shane was better at being a play caller. I think Brian's probably going to be in the middle there. I hope he's better than Nick, but I don't know if he's going to be able to be as good as Shane, at least right away. And hell, if the Eagles live up to their promise, he might be one and done. Domo might be right. He might be head coach next year. That's how quick it can happen from a successful team. But I think he's going to be fine. There's too much talent on that offense to not have success. The defense I'm more concerned with. One, because here's the thing. I have tremendous respect for Vic as well. How could you not? The whole freaking league is playing this offense. I'm being, embellishing a little bit. But that's my concern. Too many people play it. And you know this from the history. Whether it's Tony's cover 2 or Pete Carroll's cover 3, people catch up. When everybody starts copying in so many teams and they see it week after week after week, people catch up. That's my concern. So many teams are playing the same Vic Fangio system. It's going to lose some of its je ne sais quoi, shall we say. I mean, it's going to lose some of its and it always happens that way. We've seen it in history.
Well, I would assume Sean's going to, try to put his own tweaks into it. I like what he's got on the fit. There's some guys I like that I think can be difference makers in this defense. Young guys. I mean, Sidney Brown's really impressed me. I liked, Zach Cunningham and Christian Ellis last night looked good. I mean, Nakobe Dean, I already think is going to be a terrific player. They're not going to have 70 sacks this year, but it's going to be a pass rush that whether it's 60, 55 or 65, that's going to put fear in the hearts of quarterbacks every time they drop back, because they just got waves of people that they can attack with. So, I mean, you could say the same thing about the offense, John, and that, defensive coordinators around the league have spent the entire offseason looking at the Eagles offense and looking at Jalen Hurts and trying to figure out how do we stop him. Now, the key there is for the Eagles to know that, which they obviously do, and to have some, they've got to change. They've got to evolve that offense. So whether it's, I don't know, we're going to see there's going to be some differences in that offense this year. I don't know what they are. They'll probably be very slight. But teams are going to try to shut the Eagles down on the outside. Are those two wide receivers going to put up the numbers they did last year? Maybe, maybe not. Teams might say, we're going to do everything we can to shut them down, and we'll take our chances with Dallas Goedert and the running backs. So we'll see.
And again, trying not to read too much into a game that neither team was going all out to win, but you got to try and take something out of it. You mentioned the Eagles are going to be hard-pressed to get 70 sacks again this year. Agreed. They got one last night. And I know the starters weren't playing. No Hassan Reddick, no BG. I get all that. One. Didn't stop the Browns from getting six sacks last night. And no Myles Garrett, who is the best maybe in all of football. He wasn't even dressed. Eagles offensive line depth. We know they put a lot of resources into it, and that's why Stoutland's here. And getting Stoutland University, they'll make you into a scholar. And they didn't look very scholarly for me last night. Is this group one of the lesser Eagle depth groups we've seen in the last several years?
I mean, I think they have some good guys. Josh Sills did not play very well last night, obviously. No. I mean, he was responsible for the safety. He was responsible for the first sack. Josh Sills has some other things on his mind, so I'm guessing he probably didn't stay in the greatest shape of his life. And it's going to take him a while to get back on track. But, Tyler Steen and Jack Driscoll give them depth. Sua Peta is who he is. So, I mean, they've got to stay healthy there, Jody. I mean, they can't lose 40 games to injury like they did back in 2020. They got to be closer to last year when nobody got hurt, because that offensive line, when the starters are out there, is as good as it gets. And if those guys are out there, Jalen's going to get protected.
You mentioned a name there, Tomo, and I'm interested because I haven't rewatched the game yet. So, you got, in many ways, you guys have a better view from television. The best defensive player to my eyes last night was Zach Cunningham. Did it come across that way on the broadcast? Because he's been very good since he got here, and even in the joint practices, he's making plays on Deshaun Watson, tipping balls. He's very long. I think they may have found something in Zach Cunningham, because my only concern, he was a very good player in Houston. My only concern was, is he healthy? Did he have anything left? He's a good player. I think they may have fixed linebacker.
I think so too, and because he did look really good last night, John, and so did Christian Ellis, which that isn't a surprise. He's been pretty good. So Nicholas Murrow's probably on the outside looking in now, but they have three. It looks like, and I don't know what the situation is with Miles Jack, but
Miles
they look like they have at least three good linebackers.
Yeah, I think Miles is headed in a negative direction. So I think they took the shot with both of them and say, who's better? And I think we clearly see who's been better. He's got 2 weeks, but if Zach Cunningham keeps playing the way he has the next 2 weeks in practice and joint practice with Indy, he's got to be the starter next to Nakobe Dean. And he was last night, by the way.
Knowing kind of their approach, I mean, they feel that even in the draft, you're going to hit 50-50. I mean, that's good. I think that's why they signed both of those linebackers. They figured we're going to hit on one of them maybe, and the other, I mean, it's only a 1-year deal. We pay whatever it's going to cost to put him on practice squad or wherever he goes.
Last night, Joseph Nada made a couple of catches in the second half when balls were being dropped on Tanner McKee, which I felt bad for. He's throwing great balls, and the guys just aren't coming up with it. Nada caught the balls that went his way. Last week in the preseason game, didn't do much. Hadn't been great in the joint practices. And the day that I was there, Tyree Cleveland was catching everything. And John said, he's been pretty much doing this all camp. Joseph Nada moved back ahead of him. Both undrafted players, not a rookie as compared to Cleveland, who's been around, and assuming Cleveland's injury is not something that's lasting. Think Nada did enough last night to keep himself potentially on the 53. You think the Eagles will go 6 wide receivers?
Yeah, no, I think Nada ends up on the practice squad. I mean, that's the plus of having a 15-man practice squad now. I mean, you can do that with a lot of guys, and they're assuming nobody else claims them. So that's where I think Nada ends up. I mean, he did look good last night, but again, I mean, they were playing the Browns, third team, fourth team guys at that point.
Yeah, it's always tough to gauge. Same thing. Everybody got excited with Eli Ricks last night. Boy, Calais Ringo did not look good.
No,
he didn't.
I mean, that one throw was he just did not track the football. And it was an easy pass defense if he just picked it up. Now he's a guy you got to keep on the roster. They're not cutting him. He's got long-term potential, but boy, he did not look ready. So you talk about this Zach McPherson injury from that perspective as well. And Josh Jobe has been playing well. So there's some buffering between, say, Slay and Bradbury and Ringo. But other than Marcus Mariota, it was tough to spin Calais Ringo in a positive fashion. And people want him to change positions. I've heard a lot of people, get him on the field, play him at safety. I'm like, no, please. Let's. It's
their
one of those things.
Position guys really. I mean, if there's a position that concerns me, it's there because now they don't have McPherson. Ringo plays poorly last night. Darius Slay's 33 now, 32 and change. Yeah, I mean, he's at an age where the chance of him playing 17 games this year is minimal. He's going to miss some time. Avonte Maddox is a guy with an injury history, although he's very talented. So, I mean, they need depth at that position. And right now, I'm not sure they have enough of it. So, you asked me earlier, Jody, about the depth at offensive line compared to cornerback right now. It's I mean, that's where I feel is a bigger
See, I
concern.
liked it on paper, but they're all young, unproven players. But they have a lot of talent. Like that Mekhi Gardner's been good, but he's sort of hasn't. I think Eli Ricks isn't ready, despite the pick 6. But it's better than it has been, Damo, at least from a talent perspective. But they're all unproven,
Yeah.
And that's why I think they started cross-training Zach McPherson, because he had been working strictly in the slot. Now they have him back outside. But now he's probably going to be out. So, that's a difficult injury.
Those young DBs were getting lit up by Kellen Mond. If we're going to keep things in perspective, who they're playing against, not get too crazy about, because you're doing against the third team. They can't stop Kellen Mond. That's not a good sign.
By the way, remember, somebody brought it up. I wish I remembered. Somebody brought it up. It might have been Jimmy Kempski. I'll give him credit for it. When Chris Sims graded Kellen Mond above Jalen Hurts, which is it's not what you want to lead the resume with as an evaluator.
Yeah, you want a mulligan on that one. All right, Damo, I've got a multiple choice question for you. And last night was, as I predicted, a showcase game for one Derek Barnett. Not only did he start, they sent him out there as a captain before the game started.
Yeah, how about that? By the way, the captains, I forgot to bring that up. That was
I thought prior to, they're going to try and sell this guy this week. They're going to hope he gets in there, makes a couple plays on national TV, on the NFL Network. Maybe a team gets an injury to a defensive end this week. Howie Roseman puts in the call. He didn't do much last night. So the 3 choices are, Mr. Domowitch, Derek Barnett will be here on the roster week 1. Derek Barnett will be traded to another team for a day 3 conditional pick, or Derek Barnett will be, unfortunately for him, given his walking papers, and he's going to have to hit the street and try and find himself a job. Which of those 3 is most likely, Paul Domowitch?
Again, I have not seen him in the joint practices or the daily practices, but he didn't. I mean, last night he was invisible, but I'm still going to say he'll be on this roster at the end of the preseason.
I would say of that grouping, and Jody's not a big Derek Barnett fan, but the captains last night were Boston Scott, Derek Barnett, and Josh Jobe. If they were trying to showcase him, he only played stinking 10 snaps, so they didn't do a good job showcasing him. So some guys had to play. I'm surprised, Damo, how much they've tried to get him involved. It's like, I don't see, if everybody's healthy, and already Reddick's hurt, but they expect him back for week 1.
Right.
If he's back, you have Reddick, you have Sweat, you have BG, you have Nolan Smith, who got banged up. So you could see it as an insurance policy, great insurance policy. But do you really need a 5th edge rusher if everybody's healthy? I don't think you do.
You got the if.
You said you think they're keeping 10 defensive linemen, John. I would guess that's 5 and 5.
They might keep 11. They're so deep on the defensive front. But what I'm saying is, from the Derek Barnett perspective of trying to move him, they're not cutting him, Jody. But get that out of your head. They are not cutting Derek Barnett. Could they move him? Trade now, and that's why I bring up the showcase part of it. If they're trying to trade him, they're not doing a good job showcasing him, because he's in, he's out. He's almost getting deference, but some people have to play, like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis as well. They were in, they played, but they were out really quick. Derek Barnett, same way. So if you're trying to showcase him, you're not doing a very good job, is all I'm trying to say. But he's not getting cut. Forget that. He's not.
All right. You
Another
think it's
thing-
0%? I don't think it's
Zero.
0, John.
Zero.
Another
Cut.
Okay.
Another
I'm
thing-
saying trade different. Yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind too is, yeah, yes, they have all that depth on their defensive line, but two of those guys, BG and Fletcher Cox, are older guys.
Yeah.
You know, Graham is 2 years removed from an Achilles. They don't want to play them a lot. They want to be selective. They want to have them strong in the fourth quarter, and to do that, you've got to be sending out waves the rest of the game, and that's why I don't see them getting rid of Derek Barnett, because they still feel he has something to give.
I know you've said a couple times you haven't seen the joint practices, and this one is kind of where you'd probably like to be able to say you've seen some action, not preseason games, but we do get to see the preseason games. Trey Sermon last night, really nice run, the nicest run of the entire game. Also coughed the football up at an inopportune time. So he had one in the major plus column, one in the major negative column. Again, I was kind of intrigued by the way Sirianni used his guys. Swift gets deference last night, doesn't carry it at all. Gainwell gets tackled for safety first play and then is in there, but was in the first half and the second half. What do you think the overall offensive thought process is about their running backs with one preseason game to go before it gets underway?
Yeah, I mean, first with Sermon, I mean, he had two in the negative column because he also blew a blitz pickup block that gave up a sack.
I think they all blow blitz pickup, Damo. I
Yeah.
don't think they have a pass protection.
But he's a big guy that last week stoned somebody on the same kind of play. So I mean, he's big enough and strong enough that I mean, he's a pretty good blitz pickup guy. I mean, he's going to end up on the practice squad. Maybe somebody will claim him before that. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, they like him enough to want to keep him around and develop because of the fact that they don't really have a plethora of power backs. I mean, they have Rashad Penny who fits that mold, but Rashad Penny's missed 32 games in 3 seasons. So as we look at him and I mean, the guy when he was healthy is last 2 years averaged like 6.5 yards per carry, but when he's healthy, I mean, and so he can go any minute. You just don't know. You look at history and you say he ain't staying healthy. But he was worth the minimal gamble they took to sign him. I mean, a 1-year deal for whatever, I forget, they're paying. So I mean, I like the guy. If Rashad Penny can stay healthy, this run game is going to be brutal. I mean, it's just going to, it's just another great weapon to have in RPOs and short yardage and first down. I think they're going to be I mean, I love to answer your question, Jody, I love their running back situation. DeAndre Swift was a big pickup. He can catch the ball. We saw that run in the first game. I mean, where he just made people miss. Again, though, he's not a guy. I think he's averaging his career like 9 carries a game. I mean, he's a guy you mix and match with the passing game and the run game. Same thing with Gainwell. So it's going to be a running back by committee, but there are no weaknesses in that group. And then you got Boston Scott waiting for 2 games a year against the Giants.
Yeah. And a captain. Yeah, that's what at P Damo. Make sure you follow Paul on Twitter. 33rd Team does a tremendous job writing for Joe Banner's site and Mike Tannenbaum. So many heavy hitters on the 33rd Team. You should check it out. I see. I'm. Here's what concerns me about running back: the uncertainty. Like I don't know what they're doing. I don't know who the guy. I want a guy. I want Nick Chubb. That's what I want. People are talking about Nakobe Dean. Great play coming through the line. Force fumble. Guess what? Nick Chubb ain't fumbling that ball. He ain't fumbling that ball. The uncertainty. Like it could be Gainwell, it could be Swift, it could be Penny. Again, if the Giants show up, it could be Boston Scott. I don't know who it is from week to week. I don't like that uncertainty, Damo.
I like that uncertainty. I mean, I think it keeps defenses guessing. I mean, I think all of those guys are can play. We've had this discussion before. I mean, you don't. you don't view them, as you don't see the benefit as much as I do of Swift and Gainwell in the passing game this year. You don't think they'll, I think, running backs.
Well, I see them with Swift. They've been trying to get him the football with design plays. I just don't think they're going to dump it off. I don't think Jalen's a dump off guy.
I don't think so either. I think we're going to see. Last year they might have ran in a half a dozen wheel routes the entire season with their running backs. I think this year we're going to see those guys with designed routes. I just think not a dump off so much as on a third and long when he can't find Brown and Devontae Smith. His last resort there, sitting in the middle of the field wide open, is going to be Kenny Gainwell or DeAndre Swift. That's where I think, I think we're going to see him this year. His completion percentage went from 61 to 66 this year. I really think Jalen Hurts could be a 70% completion passer this year because of the addition of Swift and because of the integration of Gainwell in the passing game.
And I hear what John says about wanting a guy, but I'll take Isaiah Pacheco. He was pretty good in that last game of the year last year. Nobody knew who the hell Isaiah Pacheco was in December before the playoffs got underway. Damo, appreciate you jumping in with us. Thanks for staying as long as you did. I will talk to you later, my friend.
That's right. We'll be talking again. And thanks for having me, guys.
Paul Domowitch from the 33rd.
Are you doing Damo's podcast?
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
From the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. I got to get out of here in about 40 minutes. I got to do a show on CBS Sports Radio today.
There we go.
And my producer booked Paul Domowitch from the 33rd team to join me on my CBS Sports Radio show without running it by me first. I never knocked talking to Damo, but I said, well, about an hour and a half in between the two spots.
Well, you got some good reps in, Jody. That's good reps. And now
Damo and I will hit the ground running at 11 o'clock.
You'll be sharper on that second one, unfortunately. But we got the reps down here.
Thank you very much for providing the reps. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We'll come back for hour number 2 here on Birds 365.